My name is Melissa Jones, and today I'm going to talk to you about the unique entity identifier for awards management in the integrated award environment. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter them in the chat. All chat entries will only be seen by the meeting host. We will do our best to answer questions at the end of the presentation, but given the large number of attendees, most questions will be addressed through frequently asked questions posted to gsa.gov/entity ID. Here's an overview of what we will discuss today. First, we'll get into the meeting purpose and outcomes, a little bit of background, talk about the unique entity ID standard, the unique entity identifier assignment process, determining a unique entity, the unique entity ID transition, implementation schedule, and how to stay involved. The purpose of this meeting is to share an update on the status of the unique entity identifier transition and discuss the technical specification for the new identifier. At the end of this meeting, attendees will have a shared understanding of the plan for transitioning to the new SAM-generated unique entity identifier, understand the details of the new unique entity identifier standard, and know GSA's next steps and how to stay involved. Before we dive into the unique entity ID used for awards management in the integrated award environment, or IAE, let's quickly get to know IAE. IAE serves both the assistance community, comprised of grants, loans, scholarships, insurance, and other types of financial assistance, and the procurement community. IAE provides valuable information to entities around the world so they can participate in the federal government's award process. The information we collect is critical as it provides a unique set of data used by government officials through every phase of the award process. IAE's role is to create an efficient way for entities and federal organizations to submit required information and to make that information easily available in multiple formats, including search, reports, APIs, and data extracts. Over several years, 30 systems were consolidated into 13 systems managed by IAE. With the launch of SAM.gov in 2012, Central Contractor Registration, CCR, Online Reps and Certs, ORCA, and Excluded Parties lists were merged together. Beta.sam.gov is a continuation of the effort to consolidate and improve the collection and distribution of information vital to the award process. We officially retired WDOL.gov last quarter and now have 6 more systems remaining to merge into beta.sam.gov, eventually leaving us with just that one system. For those keeping track, WDOL.gov marks the second IAE system to be transitioned into beta.sam.gov, joining CFDA.gov. And they joined peepers.gov, which merged into cpars.gov earlier this year. If you do the math, that leaves us with 6 more systems to merge into the beta site. Next up, FBO.gov and then SAM.gov, at which point the beta moniker drops off the beta site and we're left with only one SAM.gov system. So now that you're more familiar with IAE, let's talk about some terms that you will need to be familiar with in regards to this discussion. First is a unique entity identifier. What is a unique entity identifier, or UEI? It's a number or other identifier used to identify a specific commercial, nonprofit, or government entity. The unique entity identifier is used within SAM.gov and IAE as a primary key to uniquely identify an entity or part of an entity. What is a unique entity? A unique entity is an entity or part of an entity whose identifying information does not match that of any other entity doing business with the federal government. An entity is defined as organizations or individuals applying for financial assistance, contract awards, loans, grants, or who need to register to do business with the federal government, including but not limited to sole proprietors, corporations, partnerships, government agencies, nonprofits, etc. Today, the DUNS number is used as the unique entity identifier for doing business with the U.S. government. IAE is moving to a new non-proprietary identifier requested in and assigned by SAM.gov. The technical specifications for the new unique entity identifier were published this summer. Now let's talk about how we got to a new SAM.gov unique entity identifier. So how did we get here? We got here through a government-wide effort to decouple the unique entity ID from entity validation services. In 2015 and 2016, the regulations 2 CFR and FAR were changed to remove specific references to Dun & Bradstreet and the DUNS to lay the foundation for decoupling the identifier from the entity validation services. In 2017, GSA issued 2 requests for information to engage the public and government on entity validation and unique entity identifier options. A government-wide integrated project team analyzed the RFI feedback and existing unique entity identifiers based on the criteria established by IAE governance. In August of 2018, GSA issued a request for proposal for entity validation services. The request for proposal included the new government approach to separate the government requirement for a unique entity identifier from the government requirement to validate that the entity is unique. This enables the government to transition to the new non-proprietary identifier requested in and assigned by the System for Award Management, or SAM.gov. In 2018 and 2019, an interagency working group created the SAM-generated Unique Entity Identifier Standard. In March of 2019, GSA awarded the new Entity Validation Services contract, and finally, in July of 2019, the Unique Entity Identifier Standard was published in the Federal Register. So what is changing? The unique entity identifier used to do business with the government is changing, and the process to get a unique entity identifier to do business with the government will change. But the definition for entity uniqueness is not changing. So let's talk about the unique entity identifier in more detail. The SAM-generated unique entity identifier is a new data element assigned by SAM.gov. SAM.gov records that have already been assigned DUNS numbers prior to the completion of the transition will retain the DUNS for historical purposes, and D&B open data limitations remain in effect in perpetuity. The new UEI is stored as a 12-character alphanumeric value within databases and passed as such within interfaces and extracts. This 12-character value will adhere to the following rules. The letters O and I will not be used to avoid confusion with 0 and 1. The first character will not be a 0 to avoid cutting off digits that can occur during data imports, for example, into spreadsheet programs. 9-digit sequences will not be used in the identifier to avoid collision with the 9-digit DUNS number or taxpayer identification number. The first 5 characters will be structured to avoid collision with the commercial and government entity code formatting, or CAGE code. The unique entity identifier will not be case sensitive, and the final character will be a sum of the first 11 characters, also known as a checksum. Checksums are used to detect errors within data. Lastly, the unique entity identifier will not contain the entity's electronic funds transfer, or EFT indicator. The EFT indicator will remain a separate field in SAM.gov. We received a number of questions on the EFT indicator, so let's talk about it a little more. Today, the DUNS +4 field in SAM.gov is used to identify additional bank accounts associated with a single SAM.gov registration. The DUNS +4 is a separate field from the DUNS field in SAM.gov. The DUNS +4 is not provided by D&B, but determined by the entity during registration. Soon, the DUNS +4 field name in SAM.gov will be relabeled to EFT indicator to align with regulations. The DUNS +4 data provided by entities in that field will not change with the relabeling. Additionally, when a new unique entity identifier is assigned to an entity registration in SAM.gov, The existing EFT indicator data will not change. Now that we've talked about the identifier, let's talk about the process to obtain a unique entity identifier and how that will be changing. Today, entities go to Dun & Bradstreet to request their unique entity identifier, the DUNS number, and only after their DUNS number is assigned can they go to sam.gov and register. Today, entities must record any changes to their legal business name and physical address with D&B, and only after their DUNS record is updated and the data is available to sam.gov can they update their entity registration. Today, entities may have to contact 2 different help desks if they have questions about their unique entity identifier. An entity has to contact the D&B help desk for issues related to their DUNS number or DUNS record, and the Federal Service Desk for help with their sam.gov entity registration. In December 2020, we are changing the unique entity identifier assignment process. The new process will make it easier to get a unique entity ID by streamlining the request and ongoing management process. In the future, entities will go to a single place, sam.gov, to request their unique entity identifier and register their entity to do business with the U.S. government. Entities will go to a single place, sam.gov, to make any updates to the legal business name and physical address associated with the unique entity identifier, and entities will have a single customer support help desk for all unique entity identifier and entity registration issues. Please note, the new process will not impact the CAGE or TIN process. Now that we've talked a little bit about what is changing, let's talk about what is not changing. The definition of what makes an entity unique is not changing. IAE acquires commercial entity validation services to validate entity uniqueness and entity core data. Uniqueness is based on an entity being a separate legal entity and/or associated with a separate physical address. Based on the uniqueness determination, a unique entity identifier is assigned to that entity. So what does the unique identifier transition look like? Over the next 18 months, we'll transition to the new unique entity identifier. Let's walk through the transition at a high level. Today, it's business as usual, where the DUNS number is the official identifier for doing business with the government. Entities continue to register in sam.gov using the DUNS number assigned by Dun & Bradstreet, and entity uniqueness continues to be validated by D&B as part of the DUNS number assignment process. We are entering the transition phase, which will continue through December of 2020. Similar to the current state, during this phase, the DUNS number remains the official identifier for doing business with the U.S. government. Entities continue to register in sam.gov using the DUNS number assigned by Dun & Bradstreet, and entity uniqueness continues to be validated by D&B as part of the DUNS number assignment process. During this phase, GSA will publish updated technical specifications, which include the new SAM-generated unique entity identifier for interfacing systems. GSA will develop the tools needed to generate unique entity identifiers, and GSA will begin to assign and make visible new SAM-generated unique entity identifiers for all entity registrations, contract opportunities, award reporting, subcontract reporting, and past performance reporting. GSA will develop interfaces to the new entity validation service provider to determine entity uniqueness and support robust testing of new interfaces with agency systems. GSA will also communicate upcoming changes to stakeholders, sharing more detail as they become available. With the conclusion of this phase, transition will be complete. As mentioned, this is anticipated to happen in December of 2020. When the transition is complete in the future state, the SAM-generated unique entity identifier becomes the official identifier for doing business with the U.S. government. At this time, entities will request new unique entity identifiers through sam.gov before starting their entity registration, and entity uniqueness is determined by the new entity validation service provider. And as mentioned earlier, DUNS numbers that have already been assigned to records prior to the completion of the transition are retained for historical purposes. Let's talk a little about what will happen to existing entity registrations during the transition. Existing registrations will automatically be assigned a new UEI, which will be displayed in SAM.gov. Purpose of registration, core data, assertions, representations and certifications, points of contact, etc. in SAM.gov will not change, and no one will be required to re-enter this data. DUNS assigned to the registration will be retained for search and reference purposes. Now, we know you're eager to learn more about the IAE implementation schedule. The high-level implementation schedule will be released later this quarter. The implementation schedule will include the time when updated data services, APIs, and extracts, when the UEI will be visible in SAM.gov, when entities can validate information with the new EVS provider to include hierarchy, and when the UEI is available for reporting activities within IAE. I know this is a lot of information to digest, and having overviewed the unique entity ID changes, let me say, we know change can be confusing and change can be frustrating. We hope to make the change easier by sharing information about the coming changes and transition plan as it becomes available on the unique entity identifier update page linked to here. We will be working with all stakeholders throughout this process, and you can stay involved by subscribing to the IAE Interact group, visiting the gsa.gov/entity ID webpage, or by emailing entityvalidation@gsa.gov. IAE will also maintain a list of registered attendees and use it to share updates and notifications of future videos, which will be posted on the gsa.gov page. Lastly, API specifications inclusive of the new unique entity identifier are posted at the link here. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this update.